In this movie, we're going to take a look at deleting generated files, which are files that are created within Final Cut. Now, generated files include three things: your render files, which are the temporary video and audio files that Final Cut generates when you do things like create effects, and optimized files and proxy files. And just to remind us of what those are, I'm just going to right-click and choose Import Media. And under transcoding, we have optimized and proxy. Now, optimized is when you transcode your media to Apple ProRes 422, and that provides better performance and faster render times. And then proxy media is when you transcode your media to ProRes 422 proxy, and that optimizes performance and produces smaller files. And of course, when you edit, you can easily switch back and forth between these files, and you do that up here in the View menu, and then that's down here. So if I wanted to go and edit with my proxy files, I would check that. But you don't need transcoded files forever. You need them during the edit, and then when you're done, you want to clear that space. Same thing with your render files, which is kind of what we're going to focus on here. And it's especially important to have good housekeeping when it comes to render files if you use Final Cut's background rendering functionality. Because when you're working on a bunch of effects, the program will render files that you won't actually end up using. So you need to clear those out. So a few things about render files real quick. They're shared across multiple projects and events within a library. So if you've duplicated any projects, they share the exact same render files. So when you delete the render files for one instance, it deletes it for all of the rest as well. And when you delete render files, you can delete them for projects, events, or entire libraries. Let's first talk about how to get rid of project-generated files. I'm going to select the project, and then I'm going to come up to File and Delete Generated Project Files. By the way, just before I started recording this movie, I rendered this entire project, so you won't see any orange lines above anything. Yours will not be that way, so if you would like to do this yourself, you can just come up to Modify and Render All, for example. I'll go ahead and do Delete Generated Project Files, and you see that I have the option of deleting my render files, my optimized media, or my proxy media. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Up here, it does say that it's going to be deleted from all locations, whether it's inside the library or not. So in this case, I'm going to delete my render files from this project only. You could do the exact same thing for either optimized or proxy media, so it's the same workflow. And I'll say OK, and watch my orange lines appear in my timeline again. So now I've basically taken away all those render files, and Final Cut considers this entire thing unrendered. The good thing about rendering, though, is that you can always re-render. So in general, it's a good space saver. Now, as I said, you can also do this for events or entire libraries. Okay, so if I click on my event and come up to File, and now it says Delete Generated Event Files instead of Project Files. There's a little bit of an extra option here, so I can delete render files, optimized or proxy. But if I do render files, I have the option of zeroing in on just the ones that I haven't used. So that's really useful. So I can keep the ones that I'm using, delete the others, or I can, of course, delete them all and then re-render as I need to. Same thing with the library. If I come to that menu option, I also have the option to delete unused only. So in general, I think it's a good idea to go through and clear out your render files every few weeks. This is especially true if you're using background rendering, because you could potentially end up with hundreds of unused render files without really realizing it. Good render file management is just another way of keeping your project and your editing environment as organized as possible. And of course, getting rid of those optimized and proxy files when the time is right is important as well.